This video is brought to you by my YouTube memberships. To get access to exclusive perks and have the ability to nominate and vote for monthly retro movie reviews, consider joining as a YouTube member today. Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for a Goofy movie, which came out in 1995, 30 years ago, and is a spin-off of the cartoon series from the early 90s, Goof Troop. Before I talk about the movie, Goof Troop was basically a show that followed Goofy and his son Max as they moved next door to Goofy's high school friend, Pete, who doesn't really tolerate Goofy all that much. And it's basically all the shenanigans that they get into. Max befriends Pete's son PJ, and that was essentially the show. This movie takes place a couple of years later, where Max is now in high school, and he and his dad have kind of drifted apart. Max is trying to impress this girl that he has a crush on named Roxanne, and one day the two of them decide to go out on a date to a friend's house to watch a Powerline concert on pay-per-view, essentially. Goofy isn't aware of this at all, so he decides to take Max on a fishing trip to try and rebond and strengthen their relationship. But before they leave for this fishing trip, Max makes up a lie to Roxanne that, oh yeah, we're going to Los Angeles to see the Powerline concert because my dad knows him and I'll wave to you when I'm on stage. So the whole movie is essentially these two goofs on a trip as they try to rekindle their relationship, whereas Max is trying to figure out a way to get to that Powerline concert and impress Roxanne. Otherwise, he's just a flat-out liar. So this movie was requested and voted on by the YouTube membership, and the YouTube member specifically responsible for nominating a Goofy movie was Brad Lassiter. So thank you, Brad, for the nomination, and thank you so much for your continued support. So with a Goofy movie, it's very odd timing that I'm reviewing this movie when I am. It's March, so we're not even close to Father's Day, but there's been a lot happening in my personal life and something big that's about to happen that makes this movie incredibly timely for me personally. Before I get into the reasons why rewatching this movie is so timely, I want to talk about my history with a Goofy movie because I was obsessed with it when it came out. I remember seeing it in theaters in 1995. It actually came out the same year as Pocahontas and Toy Story. It came out in April and was one of those Disney animated movies that the cartoon side of Disney would put out in theaters every once in a while. They didn't do it often, but this was one of those movies they released, which is why it wasn't included in my series of reviews covering all the Disney animated features. But yeah, I saw this movie in theaters, I was obsessed with it, I owned it on VHS, to the point where I think I wore that tape out. I watched it so much. And after this movie, I ended up watching Goof Troop, and for the longest time, I thought Goof Troop was actually a spin-off of a Goofy movie. Turns out it's the reverse effect, because I was watching reruns of Goof Troop because that show aired in the last 4 months of 1992. I was 1.5 years old, so I didn't watch it when it aired. That goes to show you how much I was obsessed with this movie. But as time went on, I got older, I went into my anti-animation phase, and didn't really think much about a Goofy movie outside of it being Pauly Shore's best movie. And I don't think anybody will argue that claim. This really is the best movie that Pauly Shore is in. But I never got around to rewatching this movie until just now for this review. And I gotta say, watching this movie as an adult is very strange and a different experience compared to watching it as a kid. I don't have kids myself, but my views on the movie have really changed, but also not that much. I still really like this movie, and in fact, this movie has aged like fine wine. It is very clever, very funny, but also incredibly heartfelt, and depending on when you saw this movie, you're gonna have two completely different mindsets, because as a kid, I always looked at this movie going, man, Goofy's just ruining Max's life. He's taking him on this fishing trip that he doesn't want to go on, ruining his chance with the girl that he loves, and man, I feel sorry for Max. And then rewatching this as an adult, I'm like, Max is a little asshole. Like, he is so ungrateful towards his dad, who's trying everything he can to make this a memorable father and son trip. And the reason I felt that way is because I was that asshole at one point. In fact, I think all of us were. You may have gone through that phase as a teenager where you just didn't want to spend a whole lot of time with your parents. You wanted to spend time with your friends. And this movie perfectly captures that feeling. And your opinion on that really changes when you're an adult. Now, another feeling I had watching this movie was really thinking about all the times that I did spend with my dad. Just all the trips that he'd plan out, all the things that we ended up doing in terms of road trips. There's even a moment in this movie when Goofy is making canned soup for Max, and he uses his 2 teeth to bite on it to make holes. And Max goes, "Wow, where'd you learn to do that?" And Goofy says, "Your granddad taught me when we went to Yosemite." And I thought, I did that with my dad. My whole family, we went to Yosemite at one point. So there was definitely a lot in this movie that brought memories back. So it's a very personal movie if you've ever had these father-son trips. But the movie itself is just great as well. All the characters are really fun. I mean, Goofy is Goofy. He's got the iconic laugh and the memorable scream. It's kind of hard to mess up Goofy, and the thing that this movie does really well with the character is that it makes him more than just the standard goofball that he is when he's around Mickey or Donald. He's just your everyday goofy ass dad, and you are sometimes irritated by him, but you can't hate him at the end of the day. In fact, you kind of like him, which is kind of surprising because when this movie came out, it got mixed reception, and this is what the Rotten Tomatoes consensus is. And again, this is based on all the reviews that the site has compiled together. This is not what Rotten Tomatoes says. This is what's based off all the reviews they've collected. A Goofy movie offers enough of its titular ingredient to satisfy younger viewers, even if most parents will agree that this beloved character deserves better. What? That quote, in hindsight, makes no sense. And I know this movie has gotten more praise as the years have gone by, but this movie does so much to the character of Goofy that it goes beyond the one-trick joke that he usually is. So I really appreciate that. In terms of Max, he's your typical high school teenager who has kind of grown apart from his dad. He is into pop music. He has a crush on a high school girl that he thinks is too good for him. But there are some things about this movie that I appreciate in the fact that it differentiates from standard high school movies. First of all, Max does start the movie as being the kid that gets picked on a lot, and he has his nerdy best friend, PJ. But during a school assembly, he basically hijacks the whole thing and puts on a makeshift Powerline concert to impress Roxanne. Not only does it work, but the high school ends up thinking Max is one of the cool kids. So that's a nice little subversion. Another subversion from the high school movie formula that I really love is that the girl that Max is in love with has just a bigger crush on him. So the feeling is mutual, and I can't recall a high school movie where both the boy and the girl have similar feelings towards each other. So that's something I also really, really like. I also love the humor in this movie. There are so many jokes that I didn't catch the first time around, not because they were hidden jokes for adults that kids wouldn't get, but just things that I never really thought about. For example, the first big stop that Goofy and Max take on their trip is this old rundown possum musical that is clearly Disney making fun of Country Bear Jamboree. It is a terrible performance with terrible animatronics, but everyone is just like, yeah, this is awesome. So that's pretty funny that they decided to just flat out mock one of the worst Disney attractions ever made, even though 7 years later they'd make a Country Bear movie. Go figure. Another sequence that I found to be really funny is when Goofy and Max go fishing and they encounter Bigfoot. The build-up for it is actually somewhat tense. I'm not going to say scary, but it's played like Bigfoot is something to be feared. But as the sequence goes on, you realize that Bigfoot is just nothing but a troll. He just loves to irritate Max and Goofy more than anything. When they hide in their car, they just spend the whole night in there while Bigfoot is out and about. There's a moment when Max asks, "Is he gone yet?" And then Bigfoot just does a sock puppet show and is just trolling them essentially. And Goofy's like, "Nope, still here." And if I'm gonna be honest, the moment when the headphones land on Bigfoot's head and he's listening to Stayin' Alive and is dancing Saturday Night Fever style, that was amusing, just because it was so stupid that I couldn't help but laugh. Something else that has held up incredibly well with this movie is the soundtrack. The songs in a Goofy movie are really catchy, and I think up to par with what the Disney Renaissance movies had. They are that good, although one issue that I do have with the songs, and maybe it's not the movie, but more so the TV I was watching it on this time, but sometimes the lyrics were hard to understand. Because I remember the songs specifically and the music themselves and the beats, but the lyrics, even watching it as a kid, sometimes escaped me. Even with that said, the fact that I still remember all the songs and the music to this movie years later shows how well this movie has aged. The voice acting is also great. Bill Farmer is a fantastic Goofy. Jim Cummings is always good as Pete. Rob Paulsen does a really good job as PJ. Wallace Shawn does an amazing job as the principal, and this was the same year that he would go on to voice Rex in Toy Story. And then Jason Marsden and Kellie Martin are great as Max and Roxanne respectively. The voice work is amazing, and like with The Day the Earth Blew Up, it's really nice to see an animated movie that doesn't rely on celebrity talent, because they know you're coming here to see Goofy. Like I said earlier in the video, and to bring this whole review back home, this movie has aged incredibly well, and I think is the perfect father and son bonding movie. If you're a kid of the 90s and you're rewatching this movie as an adult, you will have a much bigger appreciation for not just the movie, but the time you spent with your dad. Unless, of course, you were estranged from your father. But if you went on all these road trips with your dad, if you spent a lot of time with him, if you were close, and even if you hated going on these trips as a kid, you will rewatch this movie and grow a bigger appreciation for everything that you had back in the day. And the main reason why this movie struck a chord with me rewatching it this time is because I'm about to go on a big trip with my dad later in the year, actually in May. I'll actually talk about that a little more in the next coming weeks. But rewatching this movie, knowing that I've got this big trip ahead of me, makes me really appreciate this movie that much more, and why I say worth seeing in your lifetime. Sometimes I revisit a lot of movies from my childhood and go, wow, this movie has aged like milk. Like I said, a Goofy movie has aged like wine. It's gotten better over time. It's got a killer soundtrack, some fun characters, some hilarious scenes. One gag that I didn't mention comes from Max's Ferris Bueller moment. He rolls through somebody's kitchen on his skateboard and passes by a baby as they're about to stick a fork in an electrical outlet, and Max snatches the fork. I'm like, holy crap! Like, I did not catch that at all as a kid, and rewatching it as an adult, I'm like, that baby was gonna kill itself by accident if Max didn't have his Ferris Bueller moment. Holy crap. If you're a kid in the 90s, you probably grew up with this movie, but if you haven't rewatched it since then, especially if you're now a father, I think now is the best time to rewatch this movie, because I know a lot of people around my age range are starting to become dads, and I think this movie is just wonders in terms of a father-son bonding experience. And there you go, that's my review for a Goofy movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Now before I end the video, I want to make a brief update on the future of these member-requested retro reviews. So going from this point forward, those with a YouTube membership to my channel will still be able to nominate the movies for each month. They will be able to give me suggestions for the movie, but when it comes to the polls, I'm going to allow everyone to vote, whether you're a YouTube member or not. And the reason for that is because the YouTube membership on this channel is still pretty small. And when it came to a Goofy movie, we nearly had a tiebreaker with Meet the Parents. And even for last month's retro movie review, Whisper of the Heart, that was in a tie vote with The Karate Kid, which I'll be reviewing in May. So basically, to avoid any more ties in these votings, I'm going to allow everybody to vote on these movies. YouTube members will still have the power to pick the movies to go in these polls, and the more YouTube members we get down the line, the more exclusive perks I will create. This is basically an attempt to be more interactive with you guys, not just those with a YouTube membership. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I want to give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow, and if you want to help to financially support the channel, you can do so via YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about a Goofy movie. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, you can do so via these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.